Well, thank you very much, all of you, for being here tonight. Again, my name is Chris Montero. We're going to be talking a little bit about the wolves in our state, in Washington State. Before we go into that, let me talk a little bit about the organization that I'm here representing, Wolf Haven International. How's the people in the back? Can you guys hear me okay? Awesome, thank you. Okay, so this is our mission: conserve and protect the wolves in their habitat. The wording is very important. Wolf Haven started like a facility more than 30 years ago rescuing wolves. In our 30-something years of history, we have rescued more than 200 wolves. At this point, we recently acquired a new facility in Montana that includes 35 wolves. So at this point, putting together what we have in Tenino, Washington, that are about 60 animals, we have almost 100 wolves under our care. Now, in terms of how we work as an organization, we're a nonprofit. We rely completely on donations and adoptions. Well, let me clarify, symbolic adoptions. We have had that apparently. I don't know if it's a running joke in the organization that somebody came to claim the wolf that they adopted. You know, like, no, we don't do that. It's just symbolic. It's a sanctuary in the conservation component and also in education. And I'm going to go into detail about these three big pieces. At the sanctuary, we will rescue wolves. And you might say, well, what is necessary to rescue wolves? Believe it or not, in our country, there's a lot of people who think it's a good idea to keep a wolf as a pet. They're very cute when they're puppies. When they become adults at the age of 2 or 3 years old, things change. They become adults. These animals are wild animals. We know dogs are descendants of wolves, prehistoric wolves that were domesticated. And you can think, well, it's like a big wild dog. It's not. When somebody asks us what is the main difference between a wolf and a dog, we'll say it's their brain. They operate completely different. Wolves have not been subject for 40,000 years of domestication. So their instincts are different. When they become adults, they become unmanageable. The same issue applies to wolf dogs. There is a hybrid between wolves and dogs. So today, we are the only wolf sanctuary in the world that is internationally recognized by the Global Federation of Sanctuaries. And the organization has been changing over time. We started from rescue just a handful of animals. Today we have a whole philosophy, and we have become a very hands-off organization. Back in the old days, you can go and pet a wolf. We had Ambassador Wolf. If this talk would have happened, let's say 15 years ago, I would have brought maybe an Ambassador Wolf, which it would be awesome, right? It's cool to be that close to a wolf, but also it's a liability issue and it's a stress factor for the animal. That's why we have these life-size cutouts. That's the actual size of a wolf. And the kids, kids love it. We put it there, they can get a good idea. That's a good average size male on the large end, and this is a coyote, in case you're curious too. And we have some skulls too. We can talk more about that in detail. Okay, now, in terms of the rescue of the wolves, for instance, we have two examples here. You can see Houston is the one on the left. He's a male that came from Texas. He grew and lived, basically in that kennel, but with a paved bottom. One of the things that happens with wolves, these animals have wanderlust. They spend a lot of time traveling. Several miles per day, easily 30 miles patrolling their territory, up to 60 miles per day. They need to move. It doesn't matter if you have a yard the size of this room or larger, the wolves will get that necessity to move, and they will escape. They're really good at escaping. They can hold, they can leap very high, etc. Anyway, they keep Houston in those conditions. And Zoe came from an infamous wolf dog facility in Thurston County. Thank goodness it's not in operation anymore. You might have heard about this place in the news. There was a child, a toddler, that unfortunately lost an arm. I think it was last year. That's where that happened. So you can see the conditions in these animals is not ideal. And this is them today. Let's see, the video is running. Houston, for the first time in his life, had to experience grass, and greenery. They're very social animals, and I'll be revisiting that again. They're very skittish animals. Contrary to what you see in the Hollywood movies, wolves are neophobic. They're nervous about new things, sounds, and stuff like that. That helps them to survive in natural conditions. So you can see he's a little reactive, a little nervous. Zoe is way younger. I forgot how old is she now, but yeah, she's a teenager basically, and you can see her behavior is very playful. When we rescue wolves, they're fixed. We do not support to breed wolves in captivity. We keep them in pairs, And there will be an exception in this rule that I will tell you in a few moments more. This is a problem. When you have an intelligent animal in captive conditions, let's say an ape or a corvid, or in this case a canid, they get bored. So you have to do what is called enrichment. And it's something as simple as putting a scent, something that smells weird, the animal will be fascinated. So we have to do constantly stuff like this to keep them on their toes. And they're rolling scent, and we're smelling things. When we feed them salmon, or recently in Thanksgiving we give them turkeys, each wolf receives one, they roll, they pee on it, they roll on it. They live in a world of smells. And this is something interesting. Primates, apes, we are very visual creatures. Well, canids, they live in a world of smells. Okay, this is the other aspect. Well, education. Steve is one of our volunteers. We are a small organization, about 18 people and staff, and we have, at this point, more than 70 volunteers. And this is the people that keep our facility running. They are the people that provide a visit, on the sanctuary. You can come over to Wolf Haven and see the wolves, and then in about an hour you will turn into a wolf expert, because they have very knowledgeable people, and they participate in different events and help us. And of course, we are involved with the Girl Scouts. We have programs in Spanish. I'm part of that. This is as he mentioned before, I'm originally from Costa Rica. This is not Texan accent. And Spanish is my first language. So it's a great opportunity to reach out to people that normally other organizations will not. Now, we have two kinds of wolves, the rescue animals and the wolves that are part of the species survival program. The red wolves, and that's the red wolf on the left, and that's the Mexican gray wolf. Red wolf is a different species of wolf, and it's endemic to the United States, by the way. It's the only place in the world where you will find red wolves. And Mexican gray wolf is a subspecies of gray wolf. When I'm talking about gray wolf, keep in mind I'm talking about what people normally call a wolf. The technical term is gray wolf. Even when they come in multiple colors, from white to black and brown, it's still the same animal. So we're part of a program that breeds these two kinds of wolves. There are more than 50 facilities that work with this to keep a captive genetic pool for these animals that are highly endangered in the wild. And later we can talk maybe a little bit more. We also have a prairie, part of the Maima Mound system. You might have heard about the Maima Mounds, these weird circular prairies. They are original for about 10,000 years, and they are human created. They have highly endemic species of plants and insects. Anyway, and off of Wolf Haven, let's gear into wolves. There's a couple of things that is important to set a base about in terms of the biology and ecology to understand also the conservation issues in our state. Number one, social carnivores. If you think about big carnivores that are social, wolves are one of these few. You might think about lions. You can think about coyotes. They're more like a medium-sized to small, or African painted dogs, and that's it. Being social animals and highly intelligent animals, they have different ways to communicate through language. Basically, for instance, visual cues. Their faces are very expressive. Their body language, you can see their tails up and down. They're talking, smells, and of course, sounds. Howling is part of that. This is the skull of a wolf. Yeah, it's falling apart. If you compare the skull of a dog of a similar size, let's say a German Shepherd that is about 100 pounds, the brain case of the wolves is about 30% larger. So if you think that dogs are smart, wolves are even smarter. Being social animals too, of course, is very important. The hierarchy. Everybody plays a role in their family group. And this role might change over time, depending on many different elements, like dynamics of the pack, environmental conditions, etc., or the death of an individual. Now, two important reasons to understand the social life of wolves is the alphas, or people call the alphas. And I would like to ask you, can somebody tell me, raise your hand please, what makes an alpha? What are the characteristics of an alpha wolf? Can somebody tell me one at least? Bigger? What else?
More aggressive.
More aggressive. What else?
Dominant.
Dominant. Excellent. Anything else? All right. Let me tell you, it's not about size. It's not about aggressiveness. It's not about dominance. It's not about any of those. In fact, sometimes alpha wolves could be rather medium or small. It's about intelligence. It's about personality. Wolves that are political, that knows how to keep the pack together, that are smart enough, those are the so-called alphas. Now, the term alpha is an outdated term. Most of wolf biologists in these days, they're walking away from this term. If you still see a lot on TV and even in textbooks, I will say that myself sometimes, we're just, it's not a proper term. Why? Because these terms were established studying captive wolves. It doesn't matter how well the condition that you provide for a captive animal, as I was telling you guys, you have a social group, an aggregate of different wolves that are not related. The dynamic, the social dynamics can be very tense and different. So the term alpha is, every time you hear that translated in your brain like breeding pair, or the breeding male, or the breeding female. And I tell the kids, mom and dad, that's pretty much it. Because the breeding pair is basically the dominant one, is the smarter ones, is the one that lead the pack. And again, you know, in terms of wildlife, especially when it comes to behavior, there's no black and white. You will see a lot of gray zones and exceptions. In some larger packs, you will see more than one breeding female. But usually, again, most of the packs is going to be like this, okay? So, oh, by the way, one important thing also, sexual dimorphism. Males tend to be larger than females. A large male is about 100 pounds, could be 130 pounds maximum weight. There are records of 140 something pounds in Yellowstone, even 160 pounds. The largest wolf ever recorded was, I think it was 175 in 1912, found in Alaska, shot in Alaska. That's a massive wolf. That's not what you see as an average. Most of the males in Washington are about 90 pounds, 100 pounds maximum. Females tend to be smaller, but again, we have had some of our females in our sanctuary 90 pounds. So they tend to be like from 60 to 80, that's an average, take a leaf. And you can see clearly the size there. Okay, now there are two evolutionary reasons why wolves are social. Number one is taking care of the pups. Even with the whole group, the whole family taking care of the pups, the survival rate of the pup is low. Multiple things, diseases, harsh winters, famine, you name it, right? So one of them is taking care of the pups. Okay, so when the wolves reproduce once a year, when the pups are born, it's like a big event, you know, everybody's super happy and excited, you know. And even wolves that are not directly, how can I say, they're not in the same bloodline, they're not siblings. Sometimes happens that other wolves from different packs, wandering wolves, join a pack. They become an extended cousin, an extended family. So anyway, taking care of the pups is one of the most important evolutionary reasons why they're social. And the other one is the type of food they eat. Wolves eat big stuff. They evolved to chase and bring down animals as big as elk. And probably most of you here in this area, you might have seen elk. You know, it's a very impressive animal. Even, again, if it's not a male with a big rack, a female has enough strength to just kick hard. And it's not rare to find wolves with broken bones, broken ribs. Even in some cases, they die from these injuries just because of prey fights. Wolves have a very unique way to hunt. It's very different than, for instance, felines. This is a cougar. You know cats, if you have been around cats, they are stalkers. They're sit and wait predators. They surprise their prey, they hide, they pounce the prey. Wolves, they have a different strategy. They just walk in the open. And that's one of the things that is unnerving when people encounter wolves, because they just want to show up, they're like, what's up? You know, they just start looking at you, they're curious, they keep that intense contact, because what they want to do is to scare the prey, so the prey start running, so they can assess their chances, especially in a herd. When you have a big herd of elk, for instance, that's when they start assessing who's slow, who's limping. And that is going to take us precisely to, let's talk a little bit about the role. Carnivores are in the higher trophic levels, which means they have a significant impact in the ecosystem that they're part of, all the carnivores in general. To what degree this impact happens, we're still in the learning curve in ecological sciences to understand exactly how important, but we know a few things. One of them has been called the sanitation effect. And it's basically, again, as I was telling you, this prey is powerful, it's strong. Wolves are smart enough to not go after the healthiest, biggest cow, the herd. They're going to go after the animal that is staying behind and limping. And that's the way they attack, okay? Now, they chase the prey, and they just bite, and they operate a little bit like running anchors. Once the wolves start biting the flanks of the prey, this prey starts slowing down. Once the prey trips and is down in the ground, that's when they go for the sensitive parts. So they will take animals that are sick. You might have heard in Washington State we have the hoof rot disease. It has been a big issue in the herds by monsoon helens. So apparently some studies are showing that up to 40% of the individuals of a particular herd are infected with this virus. In natural conditions, when you have predators like wolves, those elks will be removed quick enough before they spread the disease. So that's part of the sanitation effect. Another one, and this is a very polemic thing, guys, and you know science is like that. Science thrives in things are not black and white. So there will be always somebody dissenting. But the trophic cascade is a very fascinating concept. You will see two groups of scientists, scientists that are pro-trophic cascade and scientists that are against it. Evidence shows that definitely, yes, they have an important role in the trophic cascade, wolves, but perhaps not as big as we originally thought. Part of this big experiment about trophic cascade has been a place called Yellowstone. When we introduced the wolves in 1995, it was only a handful of animals. There was a whole complete set of changes in the ecosystem that showed up the importance of carnivores. One of them, for instance, is the indirect effect in vegetation. When the wolves were hunted to extinction before they were introduced in 1995, prey like elk learned that life was easy. If you're hungry, you stick around the riverbanks. There's plenty of food, willow, maple, you name it, birch, and water. Now, elk is a big animal. They will spend a lot of time in the riverbanks causing erosion. And also, again, removing riparian vegetation. The impact for that was habitat for fish. Murky waters is not good for trout or salmon, as you can think about it. So once the wolves were introduced, they quickly learned where to find the prey. And the behavior of the elk started changing. They will spend less time by the riverbanks, and the riverbanks will have an opportunity to recover in terms of the plant population. That will have an impact on habitat for otters, beaver, fish, more habitat for birds, more berries available for bears. So basically think about that. The most simple way, the trophic levels, carnivores in the top, they will have a cascade effect jumping all the way to the lower trophic levels. Some people take it to the extreme and say, oh my God, the wolves brought back the water and all that stuff into Yellowstone. Well, might be a little bit far stretch, but just be a little cautious when you talk about this concept of trophic cascades. Now, as you can see in this map, both colors are showing the original range of wolves. Wolves evolved in higher latitudes. In fact, the canid family is original from North America. And we're talking about, I think it was 45 million years ago. Don't quote me on that one, I'm not completely sure. But the interesting thing is, as North America was connected to Eurasia by Beringia, the canids traveled to the old world. Many species evolved in Eurasia, and they came back. And in North America, again, wolves had been in the landscape for at least 800,000 years, if not more. Perhaps some scientists think even up close to 1 million. You may have heard about infamous species like the dire wolf. That is not related at all, not even close to what you have seen in Game of Thrones. Because this wolf the size of a cow. The dire wolf basically was like a modern wolf in the large end. That's it, that could have been a dire wolf. They were built differently, and it's interesting because we tend to think in a linear way, like the saber-toothed cat is the ancestor of the jaguars, of modern lions. Well, dire wolves shared the landscape with the modern wolf. They were completely different species. And the dire wolf disappeared with a big extinction event at the end of the Ice Age. But anyway, the interesting thing is, if you see here, guys, the yellow part is where the gray wolf has been extirpated. That is one of these famous euphemisms that we killed them all, either directly or by habitat destruction. Now, I mentioned that briefly earlier. You can see on the northeast side of North America, there's the original range for the red wolf. That is a unique species, and everything else are subspecies of gray wolf. And it depends, again, before the 1990s, there was no clear agreement about how many subspecies of wolves we had in North America. They could be up 24 to 30. It was a total mess. One of the problems is because canids are highly plastic species. Species can blend, can mix, even among different species. Wolves and coyotes can create hybrids, and this hybrids goes against what we learn in primary school. Oh, you have a species that they breed only with the same kind, and the offspring is not fertile. Well, the offspring of canids, yes, can be. So these hybrids can be fertile. So these hybrids between coyotes and wolves can create more coywolves. That is something that is happening in the northeast US, sorry. Okay, now, this again, gray wolf, red wolf, that is North America before the arrival of the Europeans. That was in the 1970s. Basically, the red wolves pretty much were wiped out in the wild, and the gray wolf was removed out of the most 48 lower states. This is today. So you can see there's some signs of recovery. We have a tiny, struggling population of red wolves that have been reintroduced. And of course, you can see part of the big experiment of Idaho, the Northern Rocky Mountains. Wolves are doing a comeback. Okay. One of the big things is culture around wolves is very unique. We have a long history of both species. Native American cultures in North America, they have a very strong connection with wolves. Sometimes not always harmonious, but at least there was a degree of respect. Like the Quinault people and the Olympic Peninsula, one of the myths of creation is we descend directly from two wolves. So we're basically the same kind. We're related. Everything changed with the arrival of the Europeans. And of course, the problem with this is the long culture of fear. From the folk tales to the stories of the werewolves, wolves have this connotation of the evil animal. And even today that persists. Look at that. This is from Animal Planet. Think in terms of the message that you're delivering this. You see that picture. What is the message? It's a monster. So again, of course, it attracts an audience, and I'm sure there are really good documentaries about that, but again, it's just pulling that string that we still have this primal connection of there being monsters. Because of that, being monsters, it's easy to kill them without any remorsal. The bounties about wolves started in the 1600s, and again, people can do a pretty good living still in the early 20th century in Washington by killing wolves. Just a quick example. These numbers are from 4 forts in our state. So you can see in a span of about 30 years, we're talking about almost 15,000 wolves. A caveat here is not all these wolves came from Washington necessarily. People could cross the border from Idaho or from Canada, but they can give you a number, again. And these are the ones that people claim. Sometimes people just shoot the wolf and they will not, I'm not gonna bother to bring the pelt, it's not that valuable. As a result of this, the wolves were killed to extinction in Washington state the 1930s. There was, for instance, in the Olympic Peninsula, the 1920s, that was the last wolf that was shot. And it doesn't mean that we didn't have wolves at all. There have been reports here and there of wandering wolves, but never settled in the state. Now, things changed about this mentality of the wolves in the 1970s. That was when the 1960s, when our whole culture started shifting and understanding the importance of carnivores and the conservation of these animals. As a result of this was reflected in the Endangered Species Act. And this is the most powerful piece of legislation in terms of protection of wildlife and that this country has ever created. And in my case, for instance, I grew up in Costa Rica, and I have traveled in Latin America. And let me tell you guys, everybody look up at the ESA. It's one of these pieces of legislation that other countries try to copy and replicate because definitely it's incredibly solid and powerful and something that needs to be defended in order to protect, again, endangered species. Now, let's talk about Washington more in detail, okay? So, first of all, when it comes to recovery of wolf, we have two approaches. Reintroduction. That's what happened in Idaho and Yellowstone. Basically, biologists go there, sedate the wolves from one area, release them, good luck, and they have been artificially, reintroduced in the ecosystem. The other one is recolonization. Basically, the wolves arrive on their own. For instance, oops, there we go. Can somebody tell me what's this image? Any guess? Yes? Mm-hmm. Yeah, GPS is actually a wolf from Washington state. And you can see here definitely the motion, the activity of this wolf in a period of several months. Do you notice the pattern? There's this wheel pattern that goes to a center, always returns, moves around the territory and comes back. What do you think is happening in that center? Exactly. She said den. And that could be a den or could be a rendezvous point. The rendezvous point is basically once the pups are strong enough to keep up with the pack, they start following, their group, and they have like special places where they gather. This is what is called a rendezvous spot. So yes, it could be a den. So that's definitely showing you, again, assuming this wolf is not alone, that the whole pack might be moving around. That's pretty much, that can give you a good idea about the territory. The other thing is the mobility of wolves. These are actual images from wolves, or say the heavy radio collar here. Sorry, radio collar. I'm still old school about it, GPS collar now. But look at this guy. It's interesting, the one here that moved all the way through Idaho, survived Idaho, which is a big deal for a wolf, and made it to Yellowstone and settled there, found a pack. This is what is called the lone wolf. You will hear a lot about, especially bikers like that. Oh, I'm a lone wolf. I don't have a pack, me and my bike. Well, the lone wolf is a myth. There's no such a thing as a lone wolf. A lone wolf has a very thin chance of survival on its own or her own. What happens when you see a lone wolf is a dispersing individual. It's a wolf for one reason or the other one becomes an adult, and depending on their temper, they might challenge the hierarchy of the pack and say, well, you know what, I'm not fitting here. Like a rebellious teenager, I will find my own pack, and they might find a pack to join eventually, or basically they can create their own pack if they find other wolf of the same gender. And that is what the lone wolf is. Of course, they're humble animals. Carnivores are like that. They're not only chasing the magnificent bison or the magnificent moose. They can eat rodents or rabbits or whatever is available for them when they're dispersing individuals. But you can see the enormous distances that they can travel. You might have heard about OR7. It was this famous wolf from Oregon that traveled all the way to California, went back to Oregon. It was like a 1,500 miles journey, and that was his nickname. It's his nickname, Journey. Still alive. Okay, so they can travel big distances. So what happened here? 2008 was the big year for Washington, folks. 10 years ago is when we reset the button in terms of wolves. For the first time we had scientific evidence of wolves breeding back in Washington state, the lookout pack. And that's when the history about these big carnivores have been written in our state, and it's happening right now. Now, this is a picture of them, the pups of the lookout pack. This is the huckleberry. This is a video. Oh yeah, because who doesn't like puppy videos, right? These are local wolves. This pack was famous because they had a case of depredation in which they had to take a lethal action in them, and they stopped predating. We're going to be talking a little bit about that in terms of wolf management. So where are the wolves coming from? Basically, I have three places. They're coming up north from Canada, they're coming from Idaho, and even from Oregon, all right? This is the current situation, the official situation according to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. It's the same map that I have here. If you want to take a closer look later, come over here, feel free to take a look. So this has happened in 10 years. We have at least 122 wolves in Washington state, and that is the minimal count. It's going to change next month. The Department of Fish and Wildlife is going to release the updated numbers. There are stories already. We have heard about a new pack being formed in the Central Cascades. So it's happening. The real estate is happening. You guys are in a very strategic point. You might have heard of the Sky wolf. This male was captured recently. They put a GPS collar on him, and he's moving up and down. What this wolf is trying to do is find a mate. So I bet you guys, if this wolf survives fine, in 2-3 years, perhaps, you might have your own pack of wolves very close to you. And this is happening because you can see, again, it's very crowded in Northeast Washington. The wolves are starting to spill in the Northern Cascades. Now, take a look at this, this picture here. It's an old one. The orange polygon shows you packs in the past. This is like 2013. But it's an interesting thing. The green part shows you prime wolf habitat, all right? Now go back to this one here, and you can see it's fitting pretty well. Northern Cascades, Southern Cascades, Mount St. Helens is like wolf paradise. The Olympic Peninsula. There have been studies about reintroducing wolves. You probably have heard about the Olympic Peninsula, and of course it's a big social issue. There have been talks about reintroducing the wolves in the 1930s. In the Olympic Peninsula. There was a study in the 1990s that found out easily the Olympic National Park can support a population of 60 animals. plus the buffer zone of the Olympic forest. So yes, good habitat for them. Now, this is the hard part, politics. Washington State is basically divided in 3 big chunks when it comes to wolf management, all right? The eastern portion of the state, the northern Cascades, and everything else pretty much. This map shows you a difference, and again, it's not updated with the current packs, but it's close enough. In the eastern side of the mountains, wolves are federally delisted, okay? But they're still under protection of the state as an endangered species. That's when things get a little complicated. Remember, the autonomy as a state might be slightly different to what is happening at the federal level. And we can talk more about detail about that. That part of this is basically the eastern side of Washington is considered part of the northern Rocky Mountain population that is considered at this point recovered. Okay, this is doing pretty well, pretty healthy. All right, now, when it comes to carnivores, this is the part that when things are starting to get a little bit complicated is the management. Washington State is one of the few states before the wolves arrived that we have been preparing ourselves. Since the 1990s, even before, we knew it was a matter of time before the wolves will show up in our state. So there have been a wolf management plan that has been created and is under revision constantly. This wolf management plan covers 4 basic points. The first is about the population of wolves, having a population of wolves that is strong and resilient, you know, and self-sustaining. Okay, so it's recovering the numbers. I'm going to talk a little bit in detail about this. The next one is the difficult part of conflict. Let's not sugarcoat it. They're carnivores, they eat meat, and there will be conflict with these animals. And the other one is the prey-based wolves. And the last one is coexistence that pretty much englobes everything else. So we'll just cover all these four points briefly. Okay. Now, when it comes to the recovery of the population of wolves, there are basically 2 scenarios. And again, both scenarios imply this first component. If you take the 3 chunks of Washington State, it's having 4 breeding pairs on each of them. Okay, that's pretty easy. And the second component could be A, you can have 3 breeding pairs anywhere else anywhere in the state, and these 3 breeding pairs are successful for 3 years in a row, which basically you can have 2 in eastern Washington and 1 in the northern Cascades, plus this base of 12 breeding pairs. When that happens, you can say wolves have been recovered. We can change the category of management as a state. Okay, they're not longer endangered. Okay, the other scenario involves 6 breeding pairs anywhere else, but just only for 1 year. Why? Because as I mentioned to you guys, lifestyle of carnivores is difficult. Reaching adulthood is a big challenge, and the mortality risk for a young wolf is always very high. Okay, so models of the researchers of the Department of Fish and Wildlife shows that this is happening. The numbers are still increasing, 15, 20% every year, no matter what. And the prediction is probably in about 20, 30 years, the wolves are going to be definitely around this. One of the tricky ones still is the Olympic Peninsula. That's what they have been talking about, maybe reintroducing some animals. But it's not happening yet. Now, technicalities. As I mentioned, guys, okay, you can say a pack is basically 2 wolves traveling together. That's it. It could be siblings, but that's a pack. A breeding pair is a different story. Basically, they have pups, and these pups made it all the way through December, and that's it. So the breeding pair is the key thing here, also when it comes to recovery. Colors. This is actually a wolf from Washington State. Is recovering from the anesthesia. You can see it's a little bit like, oh, what happened? I was abducted by aliens. And that's probably the way wildlife feels, you know. Back in the old days, radio callers. Has anybody here has done any radio telemetry in the field? Well, you know how fun is that, right? It's like you have to go there with your headset and stand there and triangulate everything in the map. Now GPS technology, and as technology advances, the colors get smaller and smaller, and the battery time is even better. So, it's fantastic. It's an exciting time to be alive if you're interested in biology. Okay, now the wolf management plan. The second component is the conflict, and again, there are different organizations working in our state with the rural communities, and it's perhaps the most volatile thing. When it comes to wolves, guys, it's a highly polarized issue. You have a spectrum. You have on one end people that hate wolves, they're the devil, and you have people that love wolves to the point of being surreal. Where to find the sweet spot in the middle that works for everybody, that is the biggest challenge that we have, not only as a state, as a country, and I would say as a civilization. Because you can translate this to wolves and any other carnivore and you'll see the same issues. When it comes to mortality of livestock, it depends where you are, geography matters. And some areas in the Midwest is weather phenomena, from tornadoes to lightning. You have a lightning falling in the, striking in the middle of a meadow, you might have easily 50 cows dead. And that actually happened multiple times with wildlife, even with caribou. So diseases is perhaps the most important one. Why? Because when you have a big group of animals all clustered together under unnatural conditions without predators that remove these sick individuals, diseases travel fast. And of course, even eagles can prey on young animals. This is an old graph. It's showing basically the northern Rocky Mountains. Again, it's a little bit old, but I can show you the percentage of wolves is very, very small. It's not that significant. And you might say, well, they didn't have enough wolves. And in that area, they have plenty of wolves. The population is quite healthy. It's sometimes more the cultural element. And this is the important thing, guys, that we have to remember. It's, when it comes to conservation, is also understanding human culture and how we relate. We get cougars and bears killing cattle all the time. And they are being killed in Washington State every year. But we didn't hear that much in the news. It's about wolves that you will hear a lot about it. Now, part of the plan in terms of managing wolves that have become a little bit problematic is the non-lethals. And there are multiple systems that you can put into practice as a livestock producer in terms of keeping the wolves at bay. For instance, one of the most powerful ones is human presence. Wolves don't like people, and they are afraid of us. They don't like our smell, they don't like our behavior in North America. And I'm going to clarify that because it can be different in other parts of the world. But in North America, wolves are very timid around humans. The simple presence of range riders is enough to keep the wolves at bay. They have to patrol, and they have to change their practices of husbandry too in order to adapt to the presence of wolves or not. What you see here, this other photograph, is what is called the RAG, radio-activated guardian, and that operates with a GPS collar. What happens there in fenced areas, it picks the signal from one of the wolves of the pack that has a a GPS collar, and they go lights and sounds, wee, 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 and it scares the wolves away. And the other one is a very, very effective one is guard dogs. Now, this dog, that particular photo, I love it because he's walking at the camera all majestic, like you want to pick a fight with that dog, right? These dogs are not there to fight the wolves. If you have one-on-one, a wolf and a dog, hands down, the wolf is going to win. It doesn't matter how big the dog is or how aggressive it might be. In fact, some of the best guardian dog breeds are the least aggressive ones in the sense that they stand their ground and they will not chase the wolves away to try to fight them. They will just know this is my territory, they're territorial, and they will stay. The purpose of these dogs is basically an alarm with legs. They just make sound, they will poop, they will pee. Wolves might think, but they just approach this smells weird. There might be other wolves in this area. This is somebody else's territory. So this is a few examples of the non-lethals. I'm going to show you a quick video here, and you guys pay attention to what's happening here. Day one, you see those red things hanging there. This is a wild wolf. This person wolf is very hungry. It's winter, and there's a carcass there. This experimental plot. The same night, he's back, and the wolf is still patrolling around. Is still not going inside. Day two, you can see some motion. They're birds, ravens and jays feeding. The wolf's still not daring to go in. Second night, you can see the wolf is getting more anxious. It's trying to, okay, there's food there, but it's not going to go in. All right. Day three, the wolf decided to take the day off. This is pointless. I'm not going to even show up. Okay, that wolf you can see is very aware the food is there, and it will not go in. Can somebody tell me what's happening there? What's that fence protected with? Huh? A scent? Actually, there have been a lot of experimentation with bio-barriers, but no, it's not the case in this one. Sound I heard there? Nope, it's not sound either. Electricity, it could be, but not on this one. It has been tried. Yes? Yes, it's a chunk of red plastic hanging. That's it. That's good for a neophobic animal. Wolves can Contrary to the myth, they don't see the world black and white. It's just muted colors, but they can see red very well. Just having pieces of plastic, red plastic hanging there, the wolf will know there to go in. This is called flattery. And because it moves too. You remember the reaction of Houston at a certain point? He just like freaked out and ran away. Well, it's the same thing. The wolf is like, okay, there is food, and that thing moves in the wind. Oh, okay, I'm not going there. And, so it's as simple as that. Now, there has been something called turbo flattery that has been tested. Besides the effect of the red plastic, also can be electrified. If that wolf dares to come very close, it will get shocked and learn the lesson. Of course, some Pavlovian conditioning there. I'm not going there ever again, right? So this has proved to be an incredibly effective one in conditions that we can control, like farms or ranches that we can have flattery. All right, we're running a little bit out of time, so I'm going to push the gas a little. The bottom line of this the very basic slide is basically Washington State has a program of compensation. If you're a livestock producer, you're losing an animal, well, there will be a compensation for that. If you guys come back tonight to see the movie, you will see a little bit more about how this operates in other states. It's a very simple, straightforward system that works. A lot, of course, paperwork and stuff like that. Now, this is the point of wolf management that becomes really difficult, very polemic, of course, when nobody's ever happy, when you have to basically kill wolves. The lethal in Washington operates this way. You have to be part of this program, as a livestock producer, non-lethal deterrents. At least 2 of them, 3 in some areas, it's constantly being reviewed. So what happened in this case is the Department of Fish and Wildlife go there and attempts to remove 1 or 2 individuals. They're not going. That has changed. There have been changes in the last 5 years. A lot is being reviewed every year. Being smart animals, they might notice something is wrong here. We lose the 2 members of the pack. There's some chaos in the social dynamics. That might change the behavior and they might stop predating. If that happens, they basically change the behavior. Goal achieved. Yes, we made it this year. We don't have to do more action. That's what the Department of the Fish and Wildlife will say. If the predations continue, we have a problem pack. So they will attempt again, just even the fact, even if they're not successful, and this is the way it is at this point, it might change for next year, but the way it is now is just again, human presence, the helicopters or the staff might be enough to change their behavior, even if they don't get one of the wolves. Of course, non-lethals have to be there all the time implemented. Okay, the last point of the conservation plan, big game. Well, of course, it's interesting, if you talk to any wolf biologist in the world, any expert in wolves is going to tell you the determining factor for location and size of the pack is going to be food more than anything else. Food availability. And of course, a healthy prey base is an incredibly important thing. As we know, deer is not a problem. It's everywhere. We're flooded with deer. And animals like moose and elk too are present. It's funny because actually it was a big surprise for me to learn that apparently Washington State has several thousand species, individuals of moose, about 3,000. They're like, wow, really? Mostly in the northern part of the state. Never seen a moose in a while. Still working on it. Another important thing is called the Washington Advisory Group. And this is an exemplary social experiment that is happening here. Other states are looking at that, like Oregon. What we have here is a group of stakeholders, 20 people, well, 18 to 20 people, and we have there from ranchers to farmers, conservation groups. Wolf Haven, actually, their executive director has a seat on this advisory group. They get together, they assess the plan, they see what is working, what is not working, they review the plan, and they provide advice to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. The Department of Fish and Wildlife can take it or not, it's up to them. But this has changed a lot. I heard infamous stories like the way things were 5 years ago. It has been a lot of progress, and I still remember the first time I saw my first advisory group about 3 years ago. I still cannot believe it. Like something bad is about to happen. These people are about to start fighting. I was expecting seriously to see a chair flying across the room or something. It's interesting because I never in my life heard a rancher speaking so much ecology, understanding so much ecology, and I was like, whoa, what's happening here? This is a really unique thing. And it's an incredibly difficult thing. The Washington Advisory Group meetings are open to the public. So if you happen to read somewhere or on the Wolf Haven Facebook page or Department of Fish and Wildlife, we announce these type of things. It's a fantastic experience if you're interested in carnivore conservation. To go and see it is painstaking, heads up. The whole day is a lot of arguing, you know what I mean, a lot of stress. Okay, So how to make a difference? Well, there are multiple ways. The most important one, learn, stay informed. You know, Wolf Haven, again, we have a Facebook page. Online, we try to keep it updated. And of course, if you want to become a member, you can get a fantastic newsletter, you know, and stay informed. The bottom line of this whole process, guys, is coexistence, all right? It's not as simple as it sounds. We would like to think it's this harmonious thing in which, you know, animals and humans get together. It's an incredibly difficult process. Washington State, despite all the base work that we have been trying to create, we're still learning how to make this happen. And now we're gonna leave it here, guys, maybe to open the floor. And again, I don't wanna hold you here, hold you back for more than necessary. Maybe open the floor for a few questions. Do you wanna stay afterwards? Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you.